man sat at a wooden table, voraciously devouring a succulent piece of meat, its juices glistening as they dribbled down his chin. Behind him, a hungry boy watched with longing in his eyes, feeling the pangs of hunger claw at his empty stomach. He couldn't help but think, "Don't gobble up that meat so brazenly." As he pondered this, someone approached him, breaking his reverie. A concerned voice inquired, "Hey, what are you doing just standing there?" The crowd around them gathered, and a finger pointed accusingly at the boy. "Is he trying to tarnish the name of the Blalik household, one of the 5 great families?" they questioned. The boy's gaze dropped to the ground, and he stammered out an apology to Raphael Sama, a man of authority. Raphael's expression twisted with disdain as he muttered, "I can't believe I have to waste a salary on scum like you," and carelessly tossed some coins in the boy's direction. Anger welled up inside the boy, but his poverty rendered him powerless. The coins lay on the ground, ignored by the boy, and Raphael chided him. "What's the matter? Are you not going to pick it up?" With a sigh, Raphael continued, "You should be grateful for this meager salary." Reluctantly, the boy bent down to collect the coins, all the while feeling a burning sense of injustice. Raphael added, his voice dripping with condescension, "Your incompetence in this field of work is taking the place of an honorable holy knight. You know what I mean?" Raphael's relentless bullying continued as he sneered. "Normally there isn't a salary for people like you." He pressed, "Why don't you pick the money up more eagerly?" and then remarked, "Your mistakes are our responsibility, and if this goes on, you'll meet a fate worse than beheading." As the boy picked up the coins, his stomach growled loudly, a painful reminder of his hunger. Raphael seized the opportunity to taunt him once more. "What the hell are those noises?" He delivered a vicious kick to the boy's stomach, causing him to fall to the ground, wincing in agony. Raphael's friend pointed at the fallen boy and questioned, "What's that? He looks like a maggot." Raphael scoffed and warned, "Come on, get up quicker. Otherwise I'll be accused of negligence and poor gatekeeping by the other holy knights." In a cruel act, Raphael placed his foot on the boy's head and applied pressure, making it harder for the boy to rise. But just as the boy's suffering seemed unbearable, a voice intervened. A woman's voice, firm and resolute, called out, "Raphael, stop it!" She walked closer to the scene, her eyes filled with disapproval. "This behavior is unsuitable for a holy knight." Reluctantly, Raphael removed his foot from the boy's head and turned to face the newcomer. "So, Roxy Hart is on today's shift," he muttered. Roxy Hart approached the boy and Raphael, while Raphael and his friends began to retreat. Just before leaving, Raphael couldn't resist one final taunt. "At best, you should be diligent while standing on guard," he sneered, his gaze fixed on the boy. Then he turned and smirked as he walked away. Roxy Hart, on the other hand, addressed the boy by his name, Fate, and asked with genuine concern, "Are you all right, Fate?" Fate looked at her in astonishment. He couldn't believe she remembered his name. He nodded, managing a faint smile as he said, "I'm fine. Thank you for helping me." Roxy Hart extended her hand, offering support to help Fate get up. "We are comrades, gatekeepers, after all," she reminded him. "Take turns, and if they ever do anything like that to you again, I will." Fate didn't let her complete the sentence, cutting in, "I'm all right." With a nod of gratitude, he turned and hurried away, his mind filled with thoughts of Roxy. He couldn't bear the idea of her getting involved with those heartless bullies because of him. He wanted Roxy to follow her own path, unhindered by the likes of Raphael and his cruel comrades. It was not just for her sake, but also for the sake of the kingdom. With this resolve, Fate continued on his way into the bustling town, his stomach growling again. He knew that hard bread and thin soup wouldn't suffice. They hardly made a dent in his gnawing hunger. Deep in thought, he pondered the quirks of this world. Here, everyone was born with a unique skill, a blessing from God, but Fate was among the unfortunate ones. His skill was gluttony, a strange ability that made him excessively hungry. He often felt like an unnecessary existence in this world. In contrast, there were holy knights, people with their own twisted ways, people one could never hope to defeat in a fight. Fate couldn't help but recall the torment he endured at the hands of Raphael and his comrades. He hoped fervently that they weren't harassing Roxy Sama. As Fate strolled past the town's buildings, Roxy appeared before him, performing her gatekeeping duties. Her presence brought him relief, but something else caught his attention. Intruders were attempting to scale one of the buildings. Fate realized it was a blind spot for Roxy, and he hurried to inform her. He ran toward her, calling out, "Roxy Sama!" She noticed him approaching and asked if he hadn't returned home. Fate explained the dire situation, the bandits climbing the east wall. Roxy was taken aback and asked for confirmation, to which Fate replied with unwavering certainty. Roxy took a deep breath, her demeanor calm. She handed over her polearm to Fate and informed him that she would make her way there. She asked him if he could take over as gatekeeper while she was gone. Fate nodded in agreement, his concern for her evident. As she prepared to leave with her sword, Fate called out, "Best of luck." She smiled at him and reassured him, "Leave it to me. I'm confident in my ability to stop them." With that, Roxy headed towards the east wall, her determined strides echoing her resolve. Fate watched her anxiously as she disappeared from sight. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What manhwa would you recommend to someone new to the genre? Share your top picks. Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. Roxy encountered the group of intruders and engaged in a fierce battle. Time passed, and Fate began to wonder if it was over. He marveled at Roxy's incredible prowess, thinking, Roxy-sama really is amazing. Lost in thought, he suddenly realized that one of the intruders was approaching him, his hand bleeding. Fate assumed it was Roxy-sama, but he was in for a surprise. The intruder dismissed him as a small fry and demanded he get out of the way. Fate couldn't allow that. If the intruder passed, the blame would fall on Roxy-sama. He tightened his grip on the polearm, determined not to yield. With swift action, Fate attacked the intruder, defeating him with the polearm. He declared, I did it! Then, something unexpected happened. His gluttony skill activated, boosting his stamina by 150, willpower by 100, strength by 150, and agility by 30. It was as if his every stat had been amplified, and he felt a sensation akin to his stomach being filled. To add to the surprise, 2 new abilities manifested, appraisal and mind reading. Roxy Hart, having returned, called out his name in concern. She asked if he was all right and whether he was hurt, her eyes filled with worry. Roxy firmly gripped Fate's shoulder, her concern evident in her eyes. She informed him that she had mistakenly let one of the intruders slip through. She noted his pale complexion and voiced her worry. Feeling nervous, Fate stammered, No, it's nothing, trying to conceal his anxiety. Roxy, however, could see through his facade. She inquired further, her voice filled with genuine concern. Is something bothering you? She asked. Fate hesitated, but finally confessed, I'm really fine. Didn't even get hurt. Relieved, Roxy sighed and signed, What a relief. Thank goodness. She withdrew her hand from his shoulder, leaving Fate puzzled by her earlier gesture. Fate called her attention and suggested that they should act as though they had successfully dealt with all the intruders. Roxy protested, deeming it unfair, and reminded him that he had also taken care of one of them. Fate acknowledged her point, admitting that it was thanks to her help. He added, If Raphael-sama were to find out about this, it would be troublesome. Roxy agreed, saying, Okay, understood. We'll report it the way you suggested. Fate expressed his gratitude once more, saying, Thank you very much. Roxy, however, felt the need to thank him as well. She remarked that if Fate hadn't warned her about the intruders, she could have tarnished the reputation of the Hart family. She proposed an idea. Why don't you come and work for the Hart family? I'm sure my father would take you in. Fate was taken aback by the suggestion and responded, No way. My skill is useless, and there's an issue with the Blelik family. Roxy reassured him, telling him not to worry about the Blelik family and questioning whether he intended to work for them his entire life. Fate pondered her words, realizing that it might not be a good idea to limit himself in such a way. He then bowed to her and said, Then, I look forward to working with you. Roxy smiled and replied, Good. It's already late, so you should go home today. Come to the Hart household the day after tomorrow at noon. I'll be waiting for you. Fate bowed once more, his heart filled with happiness, and expressed his gratitude, saying, Thank you very much. As Fate's thoughts shifted, he found himself standing on a field of lifeless bodies, a sword in his hand, and a skull mask on his face. But suddenly, he opened his eyes, snapping back to reality, a sense of disorientation lingering from the vivid dream. Fate had a restless night plagued by a haunting nightmare. When he awoke, he couldn't help but feel that the dream was more than just a strange occurrence. It made him question whether what happened yesterday had been real or just a dream. As the memories of Raphael's bullying and his fight with the intruder flooded back, he realized it had all been painfully real. The lingering thought about the voice he had heard yesterday nagged at him. He recalled it saying, appraisal and mind reading. Curiously, as he pondered this, a mysterious chart appeared before him, floating in the air. Fate blinked in amazement, realizing that he could actually see his status now. His stats had all increased, and he couldn't help but exclaim, What in the world? With a shocked expression, he noted that all his stats were now in 3 digits. Even though they should have remained at 1, Fate surmised that appraisal and mind reading had indeed been added to his skills. He concluded that the voice he heard when Roxy touched him last night must have been related to this newfound skill. He wondered if it was the effect of his gluttony skill, stealing the lives of those he killed and turning them into his own power. Fate felt a different sensation he had never experienced before, a sense of fulfillment. Grinning, he acknowledged that he now understood what it was. With newfound clarity, he declared, There is only one thing left to do. Leaving his house behind, Fate ventured into the bustling Safart business district. People hustled and bustled, engrossed in their daily routines. Fate examined the 2 silver coins he held in his palm, realizing that they were all he had. If he wanted to buy a weapon, it would have to be from a shop around here. However, he doubted that the high-class stores would even allow him inside. As he strolled past the stores, a shop owner called out to him, addressing him as Oni-isan. Fate turned to see an elderly shop owner who seemed to have seen through him. The old man remarked that Fate had been eyeing the weapons, to which Fate couldn't help but agree. The shop owner then asked, "So, what do you think? Want to take a look?" He gestured toward the weapons displayed in his store. Fate had hoped that he might be able to afford something decent from a shop like this, so he cautiously agreed to take a look at the old man's weapons. The shop owner then asked Fate about his budget for buying a weapon. With a hint of hesitation, Fate displayed his 2 silver coins to the old man. The elderly shop owner's face contorted into a disgusted expression, and he bluntly remarked, "You're piss poor after all. I shouldn't have been so kind." He proceeded to show Fate a collection of weapons, calling them trash weapons, and informed him that these were the only ones he could afford. The old man couldn't help but laugh at Fate's expense, cruelly noting that these weapons would suit him perfectly. Disheartened by the lack of options, Fate realized that it might be the same anywhere he went. He resigned himself to choosing a weapon from this unimpressive selection. As he approached the pile of seemingly worthless weapons and reached out for one, an unexpected phenomenon occurred. As his hand touched a black sword, he saw the weapon's stats immediately, revealing that they were indeed nothing but scrap. Desperate for even a slightly better option, Fate reached for the black sword. However, as soon as his hand grasped it, he heard a voice emanating from the sword, uttering the words, "Buy me." Fate jumped back in astonishment, wondering how the sword had just spoken. The sword suddenly illuminated, leaving Fate bewildered. He thought, how did this sword just talk? The old man, growing impatient, scolded him, saying, "If you aren't planning to buy anything, then get lost already." Fate glanced at the old man, questioning whether he was the only one who had heard the sword's voice. Gathering his courage, Fate approached the sword once more and cautiously held it in his hand. Again, a voice resonated within his mind saying, "Interesting, you aren't running away." Fate realized that the sword was communicating with him through his newly acquired mind-reading skill. Puzzled by this unusual encounter, Fate wondered if the sword was cursed, or if it was merely an uncommon occurrence. As he attempted to examine the sword's stats, he was surprised to find that he could see only its name and form, leaving him with more questions than answers. Fate couldn't discern any details about the sword apart from its name and form. He couldn't help but draw a parallel between the way the sword was treated and his own life. The sword inquired about his decision, asking if he would buy it. Fate pondered his options, glancing at the other swords on display. In the end, he made up his mind and replied, "Yeah, I will take you. I don't have any money anyway, and I feel like we resemble each other." The sword responded with acceptance, stating, "Very well, this must be some kind of destiny. No, maybe fate." It assured Fate that it would accompany him for the rest of his days. Curious about Fate's name, the sword asked what it should call him. Fate introduced himself as Fate Graphite. He inquired about the sword's name, and it revealed itself as Greed. Greed emphasized that Fate should consider himself honored to wield it. However, their conversation was interrupted by the impatient old man, who berated Fate. In annoyance, Fate tossed the coins onto the shop owner's table and left without further ado. A new customer entered the shop, and the old man greeted him, causing Fate to vow never to return to that store. He wandered the market with his newly acquired sword, contemplating hunting goblins in the nearby field. Greed cautioned him not to underestimate goblins just because he had a great weapon. Fate agreed, reminiscing about advice he had received from an old patron at a bar. As Fate reached the capital's south gate, he marveled at the gathering of warriors. It seemed like a hub where adventurers assembled before embarking on monster hunting quests. Fate considered forming an impromptu party with fellow adventurers and relayed the idea to Greed. Greed suggested that Fate already had a companion in him, but Fate clarified that he meant having human comrades. Fate was excited when someone called out to him, inquiring if he was a warrior looking to form a party because their usual partner couldn't make it. Fate enthusiastically agreed, but when the other person asked about his level, Fate proudly declared it was 1. To Fate's surprise, the other person vanished without a trace. Greed remarked that Fate should give up on finding companions, suggesting that no one would want to team up with a level 1 warrior. Fate sighed and conceded that he had been getting excited after buying a sword. Intriguingly, Greed warned him not to reveal his gluttony to others. This caught Fate off guard, and he questioned, "Wait, how does he know about gluttony?" Greed responded by telling Fate, "That's because you and I are the same." Greed hinted that Fate would likely come to understand this shared aspect soon, whether he wanted to or not. Fate couldn't help but agree with Greed's assessment. He realized that it was unwise to reveal such a unique skill to others, as it could potentially lead to danger or even death if people discovered his abilities. However, Fate also recognized that this power could make him incredibly strong, untouchable by anyone. With determination, Fate declared, "All right, first up is hunting goblins." He arrived at a location south of the capital known as Goblin Field, where goblins had made their home. These creatures posed a threat to passing carriages, attacking and pillaging at will. Fate was on the lookout for goblins when he spotted one asleep. Seizing the opportunity, he thought, "This is it." Fate hid in the bushes, considering that there didn't appear to be any other enemies nearby, and the goblin was sound asleep. He used his skill to examine the goblin's stats, revealing that it was a goblin fighter. Judging from the name, Fate suspected there might be other types of goblins as well. Comparing their stats, he realized that the goblin's stats were much lower than his. Noting the goblin's skill of strength up, Fate mused about the possibility of a strength down skill for larger creatures. With a burst of courage, he launched an attack on the unsuspecting goblin. The creature woke up, and Fate's gluttony skill was activated. Despite the initial surprise, Fate defeated the goblin and gained the strength up skill. Fate eagerly checked his stats, noticing that they were increasing. He expressed his excitement, saying, "Okay, they're increasing. I'm getting stronger." Greed, however, cautioned him not to get too carried away with defeating a mere goblin. He warned that the day would be over before Fate knew it if he did. Fate defended himself, saying, "Oh, come on, it's my first time defeating a monster after all." Fate continued his goblin hunt, noting that his experience was likely different from other warriors who faced monsters. Until now, he had only ever been able to run away from such creatures. Greed acknowledged his point, saying, Okay. Approaching another goblin, Fate decided to test his skills. He deftly cut off the goblin's ear, placing it in his bag. He recalled that converters would pay money for goblin ears, although it was only 10 copper per goblin. Still, Fate hoped that he could earn more than he did as a guard. Excitedly, he exclaimed, "All right, on to the next one." Searching for his next target, Fate came across a goblin equipped with a shield, which he recognized as a new type. He used his skill to check the goblin's stats, confirming it was a goblin guard. The shield appeared formidable, and Fate realized that these goblins likely covered each other's weaknesses, specializing in group attacks. Fate knew he needed to start with the offensive goblin, the goblin fighter, to ensure that he killed both of them. With his limited fighting experience, he aimed to eliminate any potential threats. He gripped his sword with both hands, prepared to engage them. The goblins stood on guard, their attention focused on Fate. Seeking an opening, Fate launched an attack. The goblin with the shield stepped forward, intending to block him. However, Fate's sword unexpectedly shattered the shield into 2 pieces, killing the goblin in the process. Gluttony was activated once more, and Fate gained the stamina up skill. Fate was taken aback by the outcome, stunned that he had cut through the shield so effortlessly. He glanced at his sword in disbelief. The remaining goblin retaliated, but Fate swiftly cut its arm and sword, disabling it. Disappointed that he hadn't acquired the fighter's skill, Fate checked his status. To his amazement, all his stats had once again increased. Stamina was at 221, strength at 251, magic at 131, will at 131, and agility at 201. Fate had now acquired several skills: gluttony, appraisal, mind reading, strength up, and stamina up. He realized that he could only possess one of each skill at a time. If he wanted a new skill, he would have to hunt different monsters. Curious about why he had been treated poorly despite his newfound abilities, Fate cut both goblin ears and asked Greed for an explanation. Greed simply replied that it was because he had chosen Fate as his wielder, offering no further details. Fate found Greed's response rather foul-mouthed, but also recognized that he needed to live up to Greed's expectations as his wielder. After a productive hunting session, Fate's bag was full of goblin ears. He marveled at his luck in encountering so many goblins, and wondered how his stats had changed. Checking his stats, he was astonished and exclaimed, "Holy moly, is this for real? No way! Stamina, strength, and agility are all over 1,000. However, he was puzzled as to why he still hadn't leveled up despite acquiring numerous spheres. Greed explained that Fate held one of the sacrilegious skills, gluttony, which allowed him to steal stats and skills from others when he killed them. This act rejected the divine concept of levels, and people like him received no blessings from the gods. The fact that Fate's stats had all started at 1 was proof of this. Greed added that Fate shouldn't be curious about it. Fate was eager to continue but realized it was still light outside. Greed suggested they return to the capital. Fate agreed, lifting his sword and saying, "Now listen here, you." However, his sentence was interrupted by a loud growl from his stomach, reminding him of his hunger. Fate told Greed that he was hungry and thought they had done enough for the day. He decided that next time he would venture into a different forest and try to fight a hobgoblin. With that, he began his journey back home. Upon entering the capital with his bag full of goblin ears, Fate navigated through the bustling streets. People were busy chit-chatting and engaged in buying and selling. He entered a store to convert his goblin ears into coins, but was surprised to witness 2 men fighting over something. Fate had heard rumors about the rough nature of the guild, and this encounter confirmed their accuracy. As the 2 men pushed past him, Fate stumbled slightly, observing the chaotic scene unfolding before him. The confrontation between the two men in the store continued, with one of them telling Fate to get out of the way, referring to him as small fry. Nervously, Fate apologized and watched as the lady at the counter called for the next customer. He sighed in relief and thought, thank goodness. Approaching the counter, Fate showed the lady his bag full of goblin ears and asked to exchange them. She took a look at the bag and was surprised by the sheer number of ears. She commented, "Oh my, that sure is a lot of goblin ears. Did you hunt with a large party?" The lady explained to Fate the concept of aggro, where monsters of the same species would target a hunter who had killed many of their kind in one day. Typically, people only killed up to 10 of the same species in a single day to avoid this. Fate, unaware of this practice, nervously responded, "Is that so? I'm new, so I didn't know." The lady also noticed Fate's ragged appearance and assumed he had been fighting a lot. She complimented him on his efforts. Greed, chiming in, joked about Fate's attire, to which Fate told him to shut up. The sudden change in his tone surprised the lady, but Fate quickly waved it off, explaining that he found the noisy fight between the two men annoying. The lady smiled and told Fate she would prepare his reward, asking him to wait for a moment. While waiting, Fate's stomach growled again, making him think about what he should have for dinner. Greed advised him to clean him up before dinner, emphasizing the importance of proper maintenance for him. Fate agreed, thinking about how maintenance was just as crucial as food for his sword. As they talked, Fate received his reward from the lady and left the store, thinking about finding a nearby blacksmith for maintenance. After visiting the blacksmith, he thanked them and held his hard-earned money. He couldn't help but reflect on how he had earned more money in half a day than he had saved up in the past 5 years. The thought of his past life, including the bullying from Raphael and his comrades, briefly crossed his mind. However, he pushed those thoughts aside, determined to leave that kind of life behind. Greed advised Fate that it was essential to learn how to maintain him himself, as relying on a blacksmith for maintenance every day would be troublesome. Fate agreed, realizing that he hadn't even sustained any scratches during his recent battles. He also considered the inconvenience of having to find a blacksmith while traveling. Determined to take responsibility for Greed's maintenance, he decided to buy maintenance tools after dinner. Greed commended Fate for understanding the importance of maintenance and reminded him to be as careful as if he were polishing gemstones. Fate acknowledged Greed's pride as a weapon, and with their plans set, he headed off for dinner. Fate looked forward to a bit of a luxurious meal and decided on having meat, particularly grilled meat. He stood in front of a shop that emitted a rich aroma of grilled meat and was about to enter when a man abruptly pushed him aside. Fate fell to the ground and noticed a little girl with the man. The girl appeared to be in a distressing state, and the man was pulling her along. The man angrily questioned Fate and called him names, to which Fate responded in a defiant tone. Fate tried to stop the man, grabbing the girl's shoulder as the man pulled her away. In that moment, Fate heard a mysterious voice saying, "Save me." This unexpected voice left Fate perplexed, as he couldn't comprehend why a girl he had never met would ask for his help. He suspected that the man was not the girl's father, and he wondered if she was being abducted. Fate attempted to use his skill to check the man's statistics, but to his surprise, he couldn't see any skills listed. Greed explained that it must be a hiding skill that concealed the man's true abilities. Despite the lack of visible skills, the man's statistics indicated that he was a warrior. However, his menacing demeanor suggested he wouldn't hesitate to harm a human being. Fate decided to prioritize saving the girl and put his meal plans on hold. Greed cautioned him against showing mercy to someone who wouldn't hesitate to kill, as it could backfire later. Fate followed the kidnapper and the girl to a warehouse where he peered through a broken window. Inside, he saw the girl chained to a pillar. The kidnapper callously slapped the girl, expressing his delight in kidnapping children, claiming they became obedient when threatened. Fate felt empathy for the little girl, especially when he remembered his own experiences of being bullied for his useless ability and mistreated by others. The kidnapper continued to torment the girl, telling her she would become a plaything for a holy night, and recounting the fate of the last girl he had kidnapped, who had died in just a week. He callously kicked the girl, sending her flying several meters. Witnessing this brutality, Fate struggled to control his emotions, but Greed warned him not to let his emotions take over. Fate calmed himself and approached the girl after the kidnapper left through the door. Using his sword's ability, he cut through the chain, and the girl cheered, thinking she was free. However, her expression suddenly changed to fear, and when Fate turned to look behind him, he saw the kidnapper staring at him. Fate couldn't help but realize he had fallen into a trap. It was a challenging situation, as he had to protect the girl while facing the kidnapper. Greed advised Fate to step back, and he followed the instruction. The overconfident kidnapper, believing he had the upper hand, approached Fate. Fate seized the opportunity and swiftly attacked when the kidnapper's guard was down, cutting through him. As the kidnapper's life began to slip away, he confessed that it was Hud Blelik who had orchestrated everything. Fate promised to put the Blalik family and the evildoers in their place, fueled by the skills he had absorbed. One of these skills was Sharp Edge, which allowed him to hit twice when countering. After the ordeal, Fate and the little girl enjoyed a meal in a beautiful and fancy restaurant. He then returned her to the nearby orphanage. The nuns had been worried about her absence, but were relieved to see her back. The little girl tearfully expressed her gratitude to Fate, and he bid her farewell. As he looked at her face, he realized that his journey was far from over, and the path ahead would be challenging. Later, the thought of visiting Roxy's family castle crossed Fate's mind. He felt nervous about it, considering Roxy's polite behavior toward him, even though she was a holy knight. He planned to visit the mansion of the 5 great families the next day. Greed, on the other hand, remained calm and unflustered, dismissing Fate's worries as petty. The next day, Fate dressed in a nice outfit and set off for Mrs. Roxy's mansion. He was welcomed as a guest and guided to Roxy. As he walked through the beautiful surroundings, Fate couldn't help but admire the beauty and tranquility of the place. Roxy, dressed elegantly instead of her usual armor, left him mesmerized by her beauty, causing her to blush at his compliment. Roxy led Fate to her father's grave, where she hired him and paid her respects to her late father. She explained that her father had passed away 5 days ago in Gallia, the capital of the southern continent. His death was unrelated to the strong monsters in their region. Instead, it was due to a disaster caused by the Sky Dragon, a creature of unimaginable strength. Roxy's father had been leading a massive army when the Sky Dragon suddenly appeared and annihilated him and his forces. Fate learned about the unexpected death of Roxy's father, who had been killed by the Sky Dragon, an unprecedented event that no one could have foreseen. Roxy had just returned from her father's funeral, and she expressed her determination to raise the status of their house in her father's absence. She asked Fate for his help, and he made a promise to assist her in this endeavor. As Fate stood before her father's grave, he felt a growing sense of determination and a desire to become stronger, so that he wouldn't let Roxy down. The following day, Fate woke up with a smile on his face and enjoyed his day working in the mansion's garden with the head gardener. However, during dinner, he felt an unusual hunger that couldn't be satisfied, and something seemed different. Roxy noticed that Fate appeared pale and overworked and asked him if he was okay. Fate assured her that he was fine, but soon fainted at the dinner table. When Fate regained consciousness, he found a note from Roxy indicating that he should take a day off. He felt regret for becoming a burden to her and asked Greed about the situation. Greed explained that Fate's skill had entered a state called starvation mode after tasting a soul. This mode would only grow stronger and hungrier, requiring Fate to feed it more souls to satisfy its hunger. Fate's reflection in the mirror revealed his burning red eyes, a manifestation of his skill's hunger. Terrified by the potential consequences of his insatiable skill, Fate hurriedly grabbed his gear and weapon and left the mansion in a hurry. He ran out panting, feeling intense pain and hunger, knowing that he must find a way to manage this dangerous condition and prevent it from harming his loved ones, including Roxy. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out Ara Simp, who commented, "You actually made a part 2. This is why I love this channel. You actually do multiple parts on our unordinary video. Thanks for commenting." Fate's condition had worsened, and his insatiable hunger was driving him to hunt down and kill more and more creatures. As he ran through the streets and encountered guards who noticed his strange behavior and blood-red eyes, Greed explained to him that his skill, Gluttony, made him see weaker individuals as prey and smell their presence. However, the guards were likely to dismiss his odd behavior as mere superstition or imagination. As Fate continued to run, he suddenly encountered 3 individuals dressed in black robes, whom he recognized as his former tormentors from the Blelik family. Wondering why they were behaving suspiciously, he wanted to follow them, but his hunger and cravings prevented him from doing so. Desperate to satiate his hunger, Fate headed to the goblin field and started mercilessly killing goblins. However, even after killing numerous goblins, his hunger remained insatiable, and his eyes remained red and eerie. Greed analyzed the situation and concluded that goblins wouldn't be enough to satisfy Fate's hunger, and he needed to hunt elsewhere. Fate was trapped in a cycle of hunger and violence, and he couldn't stop himself from seeking out more prey to feed his insatiable skill. He did feel stronger than usual, but that was because of the gnawing hunger that had been his constant companion. The pit of his stomach ached, and his red eyes glowed with a fierce hunger that threatened to consume him. Freed, his loyal companion, had once told him that his crimson eyes held a secret power, one that could amplify his strength. Fate knew he could use this newfound strength to help his ever-present companion, Gluttony, until its insatiable hunger was sated. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps. As he moved deeper into the forest, Fate couldn't help but reflect on the creatures he encountered. Goblins, the usual prey, no longer satisfied his hunger. Desperation drove him to seek out hobgoblins, a different breed altogether. These creatures had evolved within the forest's depths, becoming something more than mere goblins. Fate had learned that there were 3 distinct types of hobgoblins: fighters, guards, and archers. Fate was confident in his ability to deal with the fighters and guards, but the archers gave him pause. Their arrowheads were coated with a vile substance, the waste of their kind. Getting hit by one of those arrows meant certain infection, and people had taken to calling them poop archers. Fate was grateful that his servant Senpai had imparted this knowledge to him, though he never anticipated having to apply it so soon. As he continued his journey through the forest, Fate's sharp eyes spotted a group of hobgoblins. He quickly activated his appraisal ability to assess the danger. Among them, he noticed a hobgoblin fighter, skilled in the art of two-handed swordsmanship. Another was a guard, boasting impressive stamina. Fate felt a pang of hesitation as he prepared to attack, apologizing silently to the creatures he was about to eliminate. With a swift strike, Fate engaged the hobgoblin fighter, causing it to cry out in pain. He couldn't help but wonder if the creature was calling for reinforcements, but Fate was determined to prevent that. He felt Gluttony's power surge within him, granting him newfound skills and strength. The sensation of devouring their essence was far more satisfying than hunting goblins. The hunt continued, and Fate dispatched a total of 45 hobgoblins. His insatiable hunger began to wane, and he finally felt a sense of satisfaction washing over him. Greed, his ever-present companion, acknowledged that the starvation had ceased. Fate realized it was time for a much-needed rest, his exhaustion catching up to him after the relentless hunt. Greed suggested that he climb a tree to avoid any remaining wandering hobgoblins, especially at night. Without the boost from starvation, Fate agreed it was a wise choice and climbed a sturdy tree. From his vantage point, Fate contemplated the relentless nature of Gluttony. Greed reminded him that satisfying it was no easy task, and he needed to be diligent in hunting down monsters regularly to avoid another hunger like this. As Fate rested, he felt a renewed determination not to experience such ravenous hunger again. After a while, he decided it was time to make his way back. That's when he heard a chilling sound from below, accompanied by an ominous presence. His heart quickened as he spotted a massive figure holding something in its hand. He couldn't help but wonder if it was one of the individuals he had encountered earlier, who had seemed cunning and intelligent. Fate cautiously activated his appraisal ability and realized with a sinking feeling that he was facing none other than the Goblin King, a creature akin to the forest's boss. Encounters like this were supposed to be exceedingly rare, and the grim reality dawned on Fate that confronting the Goblin King might lead to his certain demise. Well, the best part was that its skill is regeneration, and now Fate would like to have this skill. He analyzes the situation, and it doesn't seem impossible to hunt down the Goblin King. The air was tense with determination as Fate made up his mind and started observing the Goblin King. The sight was revolting, gross. That monster was eating a human. Greed knew that Fate was scared, even if it was a normal thing for monsters. Greed also tells Fate that humans are quite the treat for monsters, especially human children. Yes, Fate understands that now, but Greed needs to stop. It was really a big shock to actually witness this live scenario. Anyway, Fate had a plan, and Greed suggests taking it slow. Faith slowly approaches the King Goblin, his heart pounding in his chest. He strikes an attack, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Finally, he did it, but he couldn't let his guard down as it wasn't dead yet. The Goblin King tries to harm Fate, but he quickly goes back after listening to Greed. One more attack. Darn, this was close. Greed knew that Fate was not out of danger yet, as the Goblin King was coming for him. The monster growls even louder, and this is bad. The Goblin King constantly attacks its opponent as if its life depended on it. Well, it did. Fate was extremely scared as the Goblin King was so strong, and if that club hits him, he'll definitely die. No, actually, Greed knew that a club like that one was nothing, and Fate trusted him. So now, it was time for a counterattack. Fate puts himself together and strikes an attack directly at the monster. He chops off its hands, and the Goblin King seems to be in terrible pain. It was about time for the last attack, and dang, the Goblin King is dead. Gluttony activates, and the regeneration skill is added. Fate somehow managed to beat it at last. Greed appraises Fate, and after calculating, he concludes that these stats should be enough to unlock his first rank. Greed elucidates by saying that he could take on more and more forms by receiving stats from his wielder. Fate asks him how many stat points he needs, and greed tells him that he needs everything that fate has gained since they met. While he's agreed, and it is just in his nature to take everything. Nevertheless, if fate doesn't unlock the first rank, he will lose the right to wield greed. So now fate has two options, either to grow stronger on his own, or to grow stronger alongside greed. Even though greed was greedy for power, there was no need for fate to think about it. Greed is his one and only partner, and greed was certain that fate wouldn't regret this choice. They decide to stick together, and fate transfers his stat points to him. Boom! Greed gets a new beautiful form. It's the magic bow form, and greed could now help fate in two aspects. This was all for the first rank, so that meant that greed also has a second and third rank, which will need quite a lot of stats. Next up, greed noticed some monsters lurking behind fate. They were aiming at him. The archers, the goblins, all continuously targeting fate. Greed, with a quick and alert movement, helped him dodge the arrows. Fate was deeply concerned. The most terrifying thing was that he couldn't discern where the arrows were coming from. Greed, with a calm yet urgent tone, advised trying to aim at them, explaining that with fate's current form, a rough idea of their location was enough to strike back. Greed also patiently explained the process of forming arrows using mana. "All right then," fate said, determination in his voice. He aimed in a general direction, and miraculously, his shot hit one of the hidden archers. After resolving this perilous situation, fate hurried home, aware that the sun would soon rise. Greed, always thinking ahead, reminded fate about the importance of taking the Goblin King's ear. Fate hesitated, knowing that such an action would make him overly conspicuous, especially since he was only at level 1. However, something in fate's eyes hinted at a deeper plan. With a decisive gesture, he took the Goblin King's ear. The next day, fate was roused from his sleep by a knock on the door. Opening it, he found Roxy-sama, radiant as ever, holding a basket brimming with grapes. Fate's heart skipped a beat at the sight of her, her presence causing him to flush with a mix of admiration and shyness. Roxy-sama, noticing Fate's dazed expression, asked with a tone of genuine concern if he was all right. Fate, regaining his composure, assured her he was fine. Roxy-sama explained she had come to check on him and also brought him some food. "These grapes," she said with a smile, "are harvested from the Heart Territory, a place of lush green beauty." She plucked a grape and, with a casual yet caring gesture, offered it to Fate. He felt a wave of shyness wash over him, but Roxy-sama's ease and grace comforted him. Just as she was about to feed him the grape, the senior maid approached, reminding Roxy-sama it was time to leave. With a warm goodbye, she informed Fate of her impending return to her territory and invited him to accompany her. Fate watched her leave, a mix of emotions swirling within him, the memory of her kindness lingering in the air. This guy, Fate, is still in shock. He's noticing how incredibly busy Roxy-sama is, and a nagging feeling tugs at his heart. He can't help but think that he's somehow getting in her way, messing up her packed work schedule. Deep down, he wishes he could be more significant, more vital to her, but he knows that's just a dream. With a rare day off, Fate decides to do something he hasn't done in ages, go out for a drink. As he strolls towards the merchant district, he realizes it's still early. The stalls are just setting up, the air fresh and crisp with morning dew. He can't resist the urge to wander around, his eyes catching glimpses of colorful goods and trinkets. Using his special skill, appraisal, Fate examines various items, understanding their true worth. Among the myriad of objects, a skull mask catches his eye. It's unique, with intricate designs, promising to keep the wearer's identity hidden. Without hesitation, he buys it, and greed, his inner voice, approves. This mask could be a game changer for his secret night hunts. But then, Fate freezes. Overheard conversations ripple through the air. People are talking about something gruesome. The discovery of goblin corpses scattered everywhere. The news has set the whole town abuzz. Most blame it on monsters, but Fate knows better. He learns that Hudsama of House Blelik has set out to handle this problem. To the townspeople, this is reassuring news. But to Fate, those knights are just a nuisance, meddling in things they don't understand. There's also a story floating around about a mysterious benefactor. Someone tossed the ears of a goblin king into an orphanage in the slums. This strange yet generous act meant the children could feast on delicious food, all thanks to the gold those ears were worth. Everyone's hoping this kind-hearted soul is found and thanked. As he mulls over these stories, Fate feels a mix of creepiness and excitement about his own nightly adventures. Greed notes that he's getting the hang of juggling his dual life, serving during the day and hunting by night. But Fate knows it's more than that. He's driven by a fear of falling back into the desperate grip of starvation. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What is the best cheat skill? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. In addition to his other worries, Fate is also keen to uncover what Raphael and his group are up to. He has a gut feeling that they're involved in something dark and dangerous. Greed, ever the voice of reason in Fate's head, points out that these people, though potentially evil, aren't foolish enough to leave obvious clues behind. Fate decides he needs a plan to draw them out. As if on cue, he spots a golden opportunity. 3 rookie hunters are nearby, preparing to take on some hobgoblins. One of them looks visibly nervous, not out of fear, but concern about a rumored wandering monster in the area. They plan a stealthy approach, but before they can make their move, the wandering monster snatches their prey right from under them. It's a lick or so, it appears. In reality, it's Fate, cleverly disguised in a black hood, tattered clothes, and the skull mask, perfectly playing the part. Just then, greed alerts Fate to a new, fast-approaching danger. It's the Goblin Queen, fueled by a desire for vengeance. She lunges at Fate, but he expertly dodges her attacks. The Goblin Queen's growls reverberate with madness, making her next move unpredictable. Fate, however, remains confident. He strikes with his weapon, acting on instinct more than strategy. As he ends the battle, cleaving the Goblin Queen in two, he offers a quiet apology, asking her to send his regards to her husband. After the encounter, Fate notices several warriors fleeing the scene. They had stumbled upon the fight and witnessed its gruesome end. Fate realizes that creating such a commotion will surely draw the attention of the Holy Knights. A few days pass, and Fate continues his dual existence. By day, he serves the Hart family. By night, he hunts goblins. The Holy Knights haven't made any significant moves yet. To gather more information about Raphael, Fate decides to consult Roxy-sama. As he's pondering his next step, Fate spots a beautiful girl. Wait, that's Roxy-sama, but she seems different somehow. Approaching her, Fate inquires if she's all right. To his surprise, Roxy-sama reveals that she has a special secret task for him, something that might just intertwine their fates even more closely. The air is filled with a sense of excitement as Roxy-sama reveals her secret mission to Fate, a covert inspection of the city's residents. Their task is to investigate the living conditions of the people, a duty Roxy takes seriously as a holy knight. She's a captivating figure, not just in her beauty, but also in her dedication to her responsibilities. But today brings a new twist. Fate is to be Roxy-sama's escort. He's initially hesitant, but Roxy, full of enthusiasm, insists, playfully asking him to call her Roxy for the day. They set off on what's supposed to be a serious mission, but there's an unmistakable air of adventure about it. As they reach the city, Roxy's excitement is evident, and Fate can't help but feel a bit of joy himself. It's a rare sight to see Roxy, usually so stern in her role as a holy knight, letting her guard down to enjoy the moment. This glimpse of her desire for a normal, carefree experience resonates with Fate, and he's determined to make this day special for her. During their inspection, Roxy's attention is caught by a jeweler's stall, showcasing stunning gemstones at an astonishingly low price. Fate is amazed at the affordability, considering his own modest earnings. When the shopkeeper invites him to try his luck with the gem wars for a small fee, Fate decides to seize the opportunity, hoping to bring a smile to Roxy's face. Using his appraisal skill, Fate selects a gemstone as a token of gratitude for everything Roxy has done for him. He asks the shopkeeper for something to crack open the gemstone, but Roxy, ever the capable holy knight, needs no such aid. She skillfully reveals the gemstone, holding it up to the light, its facets sparkling brilliantly. As Roxy gazes at the gemstone, a smile of genuine appreciation spreads across her face. She thanks Fate, promising to cherish this gift. In this moment, the bond between them strengthens, their shared experience weaving a deeper connection in their journey together. During their investigation, Fate and Roxy come across a young boy who has lost his mother. The situation is tricky, but they know they can't just leave him alone. Roxy, with her imposing aura of a holy knight, attempts to question the boy, but the intensity proves too much for him, and he bursts into tears. Fate steps in, his approach gentler. He reassures the boy, promising to help him find his mother. His kind smile works wonders. The child's tears give way to a smile, and he takes Fate's hand, ready to begin their search. Roxy, not wanting to be left out, also wishes she could hold the child's hand, symbolizing her softer side amidst her tough exterior. The trio searches high and low for the boy's mother. During their search, they take a break to enjoy some food, sharing a moment of camaraderie. As dusk approaches without any sign of the boy's mother, Roxy offers to have the child stay at her house for the night, but this proposition overwhelms the boy, and he breaks down, crying for his mother. Just then, a woman comes running towards them. It's the boy's mother. The reunion is heartwarming. The boy leaps into his mother's arms and the joy is palpable. Both mother and son express their gratitude to Fate and Roxy before heading home. As the day winds down, Fate takes a moment to appreciate the beautiful sunset and Roxy's stunning presence. Caught staring, Roxy inquires if something's wrong, but Fate brushes it off. They realize it's time to head back, not wanting to face the senior maid's scolding for being late. Roxy then shares that she has decided to take Fate with her to visit her territory this weekend, an invitation that delights him. However, during their travel plans, Roxy senses Fate's distracted demeanor and questions if he is unhappy about the trip. His mind had been preoccupied with thoughts of the Blelix, but he quickly reassures Roxy that he's genuinely looking forward to it. They chat about the upcoming harvest season and recall the grapes Roxy had given Fate earlier. Roxy shares with Fate the intriguing history of her family's vineyards. She explains how the land was initially unsuitable for grape cultivation, but through years of hard work and dedication, the soil was enriched, turning it into a fertile ground for grapes. This transformation is a source of immense pride for the Hart family. However, the lush vineyards also attracted unwanted attention from monsters, specifically kobold. Kobold, as Roxy describes, are troublesome creatures beyond the capability of an average warrior. They move in groups, are hard to ambush due to their keen sense of smell, and pose a significant threat to the vineyards. Roxy reveals that dealing with these monsters is a key reason for her annual return home. As they discuss, Fate's stomach betrays him with a growl, a reaction to the mention of kobold, indicating his own hidden challenges. Suddenly, their carriage comes to a halt, besieged by airwolves that claim the fields as their territory. Roxy, showcasing her skills as a holy knight, handles the situation with remarkable ease, further proving her prowess. Upon reaching Roxy's home, they are warmly greeted by her mother, Aisha Hart. Aisha's eyes quickly land on Fate, inquiring about his identity. Roxy introduces him as her new servant, prompting a formal introduction from Fate. Despite battling illness, Aisha's spirit is lively, and she enthusiastically engages with Fate. In a direct and somewhat surprising manner, Aisha asks Fate if he likes Roxy. The younger generation might misinterpret this, but Aisha's intention is to gauge his opinion of Roxy as an employer. Fate, with genuine admiration, expresses his deep respect for Roxy, adding playfully yet earnestly that he would gladly support her for the rest of his life as a servant, despite understanding the impossibility of a different kind of relationship between them. Roxy, caught off guard by Fate's declaration and perhaps touched by his words, blushes deeply and retreats to her room, leaving Fate to ponder the complex dynamics of their relationship and his role within the Hart family. After Aisha Hart's heartfelt request for Fate to take good care of Roxy, he finds himself deeply involved in the day's activities, particularly in helping with the grape harvest. As the day winds down, Fate hurries back to the house, but his return is interrupted by an unexpected encounter. He notices a figure approaching him, a person with a weapon and striking red eyes, eerily similar to the ones he gets during his periods of starvation. Fate attempts to use his appraisal skill on this mysterious individual, but frustratingly, he's unable to discern anything about her. The red-eyed girl addresses Fate, sparking a brief and somewhat enigmatic conversation. She mentions that she had been chasing kobold but now seems willing to let Fate handle them. Despite his efforts to probe further, the girl remains cryptic and departs, leaving Fate with more questions than answers and a promise of their future meeting. Caught in his thoughts, Fate is brought back to reality by Roxy's voice. She's been searching for him and notices his perturbed expression. Although Fate assures her that he's fine, the encounter has clearly unsettled him. Roxy then sees the same girl and recognizes her as a Galleon, a detail that piques Fate's interest. He's aware of the Galleons, a nearly extinct original inhabitant of the Gallia continent, known for their tan skin and snow-white hair. Roxy shares her limited knowledge of the once great nation of Gallia, expressing her own curiosity and surprise at encountering someone who embodies the distinctive Gallian traits. As they ponder over the girl's identity, Roxy suggests they head back, sensing Fate's exhaustion. Returning home, they find a lavish dinner waiting for them. The spread includes an array of delicious dishes, and Fate, enthusiastic and grateful, decides to serve Roxy, wanting to do a perfect job as both a servant and a companion. As dinner begins, Roxy invites Fate to sit beside her, an honor that leaves him almost in disbelief. Despite his initial hesitation, encouraged by two of the servants, Fate takes his seat next to Roxy. The atmosphere is shy and reserved at first, but Roxy breaks the ice, urging Fate to relax and enjoy the meal without worrying about formalities. Fate indulges in the delicious food, visibly happy and content. Roxy watches him with a gentle, affectionate gaze, and they share a delightful dinner together. Afterward, a servant expresses her gratitude to Fate, noting how his presence has brought a rare sense of joy and carefree spirit to Roxy, something she hadn't seen in a long time. This deepens Fate's resolve to support Roxy, especially considering the hardships she has faced, including the loss of her father and her mother's illness. Later, Fate steps outside with Greed, his inner voice, to discuss the mysterious Galleon girl he encountered. He's puzzled by her red eyes, identical to his own during starvation, and the fact that his appraisal skill was ineffective on her. Greed speculates that there's something special about her, something Fate will eventually understand. During his nightly excursion, Fate encounters two kobold. He assesses them using his appraisal skill, noting their increased strength. Undeterred, he takes the initiative to attack, successfully hunting them down. Greed suggests that the kobold were likely on high alert due to recent events, leading Fate to worry about Roxy's safety and the overall situation. Despite the underlying tensions and mysteries, Fate finds joy in the simple task of grape harvesting alongside Roxy. They work well together, gathering a substantial yield. As darkness falls, Fate prepares for his nocturnal duties, aware that Roxy plans to hunt kobold the next day. Greed advises him to eat well to fuel his relentless hunger. Fate waits stealthily for the kobold, accompanied by Greed's presence in his mind. The day's events, from the pleasant dinner with Roxy to the anticipation of the night's hunt, reflect the complex duality of Fate's life, balancing his roles as a servant and a protector in this intriguing and ever-evolving story. Greed's strategy of observation and patience becomes the cornerstone of their approach. As Fate surveys the area, he detects the presence of a significant figure among the kobold. Greed identifies this creature as the Alpha, the pack leader, and notes its uniqueness and special status indicated by a designated name. This revelation suggests that this Alpha kobold is far from ordinary. Taking Greed's advice, Fate uses his appraisal skill on the Alpha. The results are startling. All of its stats are exceptionally high, reaching into 6-digit figures. Greed emphasizes the danger of letting such a powerful creature near the territory, predicting catastrophic outcomes if it's not dealt with swiftly. The size of the kobold army alone is overwhelming, presenting a challenge too great for even a seasoned holy knight like Fate. Understanding the perilous situation, Fate resolves to take immediate action. He cannot allow the kobold army to advance and threaten the territory. With determination, he vows to eliminate every last kobold, declaring war against the formidable army. The battle begins, and Fate manages to eliminate a portion of the kobold forces. Amidst the clash, Greed observes a significant shift. The alpha monster starts to take control, demonstrating its authority and strategic acumen. Recognizing the alpha's cautious nature, Fate and Greed decide to conceal themselves again, staying vigilant and ready for the kobold army's approach. However, Greed suggests a tactical change. To avoid detection by the kobold, they need to relocate from their original hiding spot. This move is crucial to maintain the element of surprise and gain a strategic advantage. Fate, guided by Greed's insights, adjusts his position, preparing for the next phase of the confrontation with the kobold army. The tension is palpable as Fate braces for the challenges ahead, his resolve unwavering in the face of impending danger. In a strategic move, Fate draws the enemy away to set a trap. Once everything is in place, he seizes the perfect moment to launch his attack on the kobold. The clash is fierce, and Fate's determination is palpable. He refuses to let the enemy escape, holding them captive in the midst of an intense battle. Inside him, Gluttony, the power he harbors, surges forth, almost reveling in the combat. Amidst the fray, Fate takes a moment to assess his own capabilities. Realizing he's nearing the alpha kobold's level of strength, recognizing the need for an additional ally, he quickly identifies a potential candidate. Without wasting time on formalities, Fate launches an attack, but to his surprise, his arrow is intercepted by the alpha kobold. This unexpected development reveals their position to the powerful enemy, drastically changing the dynamics of the battle. Fate grapples with the realization that the element of surprise is now lost. Greed, assessing the situation, considers their options, including the possibility of retreat. However, for Fate, retreating is not an option he's willing to entertain. The safety of the people in the territory is his paramount concern, and he cannot bear the thought of any harm coming to them. Driven by this unwavering determination and with Greed's guidance, Fate strategizes to gradually weaken the enemy forces. He avoids a direct confrontation with the alpha kobold, focusing instead on the junior members of the kobold group. This approach serves a dual purpose, diminishing the enemy's numbers and enhancing his own abilities through the battles. Fate throws himself into the fight with the junior kobold, diligently working to boost his stats. However, despite his valiant efforts, the challenge posed by the kobold army is formidable. The intensity of the situation is heightened by the knowledge that the alpha kobold is still a significant threat, looming over the battlefield with its superior strength and strategic acumen. In this high-stakes scenario, Fate's resolve and Greed's strategic insights blend together, driving him forward in a battle that tests his limits and determination to protect the territory and its people. Greed's tactical advice to Fate involves a dynamic blend of ranged and close combat. By alternating between bow and sword, Fate can maintain a strategic advantage, keeping distance when needed and engaging in melee combat when the opportunity arises. However, Fate realizes that putting this strategy into action is far more challenging than it sounds. Greed's guidance, while valuable, doesn't fully encompass the difficulty of executing these tactics in the heat of battle. Fate pushes himself to the limit, attempting to damage the Alpha Kobold with direct attacks. But these efforts are largely unsuccessful. The situation escalates as a group of junior Kobold converges on Fate. He meets them with fierce determination, resulting in a brutal confrontation marked by intense combat and bloodshed. As Fate battles these junior Kobold, the Alpha monster joins the fray, ratcheting up the tension and danger on the battlefield. The Alpha's first assault on Fate is a stark demonstration of its immense power, hurling him a significant distance. Greed's voice echoes, urging Fate to stay focused and composed. Despite the overwhelming force of the enemy, the Alpha Kobold relentlessly attacks, one assault after another, but Fate, driven by sheer determination, narrowly evades these attacks. However, in a moment of vulnerability, another junior Kobold takes the chance to stomp on Fate, igniting a surge of frustration within him. This frustration, combined with the urgency of the situation, triggers a powerful response in Fate. He activates the power of Gluttony, experiencing a dramatic increase in his stats, surpassing even those of the formidable Alpha Kobold. Now, with his enhanced abilities, Fate is fully prepared to take on the Alpha. As the battle intensifies, Fate senses the Alpha's increased hostility towards him, a clear sign of the threat he now poses. Greed, ever the voice of reason, cautions Fate to stay composed and not let emotions cloud his judgment. He warns that any carelessness could lead to Fate's demise, emphasizing the importance of strategic thinking and control in this high-stakes confrontation. In this critical moment, Fate stands on the precipice of a decisive battle, his newly amplified powers against the formidable might of the Alpha Kobold. The outcome of this conflict will not only determine Fate's survival, but also the safety of the territory he's vowed to protect. Armed with immense power, Fate is keenly aware of the perils of underestimating his adversary, the Alpha Kobold. As the monstrous opponent gears up for an attack, Fate readies himself, mindful of the necessity to remain cautious and vigilant. The Alpha Kobold, with a sudden burst of speed, lunges towards Fate, targeting him directly. Thanks to his quick reflexes, Fate narrowly dodges the attack, realizing that the Alpha is specifically aiming for his throat, a critical and vulnerable spot. In a split-second decision driven by a strong instinct for self-preservation, Fate opts to retreat, prioritizing his safety over engaging in a direct confrontation. As he withdraws from the immediate danger, he notices that the Alpha Kobold is intensely focused on pursuing him. Pausing momentarily, Fate reflects on the situation. Despite his significantly enhanced stats, he recognizes a glaring gap in combat experience between himself and the Alpha monster. The Alpha Kobold not only exhibits raw power, but also a strategic understanding of how to effectively target and eliminate its prey. It unleashes an attack that Fate identifies as highly sophisticated, far from ordinary, a skill that even Greed acknowledges as one capable of causing significant harm. Taking a moment to conduct a more thorough appraisal of the Alpha Kobold's abilities, Fate discovers a unique skill within the monster, one that can deteriorate the target's body from within. The monster's strategy is slowly becoming apparent, yet the path to victory remains elusive and fraught with danger. Greed, sensing the critical nature of the situation, advises Fate to switch to using his bow. Confused by this sudden shift in strategy, Fate questions Greed's rationale. However, Greed, driven by urgency, doesn't provide a detailed explanation, but insists on the importance of following his advice to avoid a potentially fatal outcome. Understanding the seriousness of the situation and Greed's characteristic urgency, Fate resigns himself to the advice and promptly switches to the bow. This tactical change marks a significant shift in his approach, as Fate adapts to the evolving dynamics of the battle, ready to face the challenges that lie ahead with his newly chosen weapon. In a crucial moment of decision-making, Fate takes the initiative. Understanding the severity of the situation, he begins shooting arrows at the Alpha Kobold, hoping to weaken it. However, the Alpha Kobold quickly counters by using a junior Kobold as a shield, thwarting Fate's initial strategy. Despite this setback, Fate is resolute in his conviction that close combat with the Alpha monster would be exceedingly dangerous. Greed, confident in Fate's abilities, suggests that if Fate were at full strength, a single strike could take down the Alpha. But Fate, wary of overconfidence and the escalating danger, demands more practical advice from Greed. Greed proposes a bold plan to enhance the power of the magic bow by allowing Greed to consume a portion of Fate's stats. Initially hesitant about the potential loss to his stats, Fate is compelled to agree, given the immediate threat posed by the Alpha Kobold. Upon Greed's request for 10% of his stats, Fate, though apprehensive, concedes, recognizing the critical need for this sacrifice. Greed commences the absorption of Fate's stat points, triggering an evolution that significantly boosts both his appearance and power. Fate watches in amazement as his weapon transforms into an elite-class instrument, the bloody Tommy gun, a testament to Greed's enhanced abilities. With a blend of humor and confidence, Greed readies Fate for the assault. Fate, now fueled with enthusiasm and wielding his newly enhanced weapon, launches a powerful attack. The arrows strike the Alpha Kobold with precision, causing significant damage and leading to its eventual downfall. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at Devil Hutia 5326, who commented, "Nice vids on our S-Rankers I raised video. Thanks for commenting." However, Fate's triumph is short-lived. He is suddenly overcome with excruciating pain, feeling as if his body is being torn apart. Greed explains that this agony is due to gluttony, which, driven by the consumption of the Alpha Kobold's potent soul, has gone into an uncontrollable rampage. Fate is faced with a critical choice: endure the unbearable pain or risk falling into a state worse than starvation due to gluttony's overwhelming nature. Greed advises Fate to persevere, emphasizing the importance of enduring this ordeal. Despite the immense pain, sticking with Greed is essential to navigate this dangerous aftermath and to maintain control over the formidable powers within him. This moment marks a pivotal point in Fate's journey, testing not only his physical strength, but also his resolve and ability to withstand overwhelming challenges. The activation of the Gluttony skill significantly surges Fate's stats, and in the aftermath of the intense ordeal, he gains a new skill, unarmed combat. Exhausted and breathless, Fate processes this extraordinary experience, which Greed probes about, emphasizing the value of such novel encounters. Despite recognizing its importance, Fate is adamant about not wanting to go through such a harrowing experience again. His attention quickly turns to the aftermath of the battle, where the landscape bears the scars of the fierce conflict, once clear paths now in disarray. The next morning, as Roxy-sama sets out on her mission to eradicate the Kobold, Fate, overcome by fatigue, wakes up late, gripped by a pang of guilt for oversleeping. He's distressed at not being by Roxy's side, a responsibility he takes seriously. Despite his fatigue, he chastises himself for his lateness, concerned that Roxy might regret bringing him along. Upon leaving his room, Fate encounters Maya-san, who playfully addresses him as Sleepyhead. She inquires about his well-being and informs him of Roxy-sama's departure. Fate is swept by frustration and disappointment, regretting missing the chance to accompany her. Maya-san tries to reassure him, explaining that Roxy herself suggested he rest, but Fate remains troubled, feeling that he isn't contributing enough to Roxy's efforts. Haunted by the events of the previous day and driven by a desire to be of use to Roxy, Fate is bolstered by Maya-san's suggestion that he could still catch up with her. Ignoring Maya-san's concerns, he sets off with determination to find Roxy. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.